Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we're talking to George Aquino, the person behind CryoArchives. Hi George, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Excited to be here. Excited to talk about CryoArchives.
Awesome. So to start, can you tell me a little about your background and what you do at Salmon Park?
Yeah, sure. So I've been here for about 3 years. Started off with a bunch of sample retrievals, which kind of get into with CryoArchives, how CryoArchives came about. Transition to more shipping, and there's several things I do here, but mainly uh, to help managing CryoArchives.
Great. So you handle a lot of the samples. You are the person who knows the ins and outs of the freezers and how all these work. So that's probably why you're the face of CryoArchives. Um,
Right.
what made you come up with like CryoArchives? Like, what was the driving force behind it? Like, was there a problem that you guys needed to solve?
Yeah, sure. So there were a couple issues. So starting off as a lab, um, we hold not only our samples but a lot of our client samples. At a point, we've held hundreds of thousands of samples for different clients, having a little more than 40 freezers, I would say. So imagine like 40 freezers. Imagine as many racks, as many boxes, and as many samples. One of the problems we came across with that is we just had difficulty locating different products. Um, with with our own products, we like say we'd have production, we store those samples in the freezer. Uh, Again, it's like how do we locate stuff? We put it in a freezer. We had to communicate with each other. Hey, these samples are in this freezer. We didn't have enough space in this freezer, so we had to put a little bit in this freezer. It just kind of how I
By
would
word of
say it.
mouth,
Right, and it just get lost in a bunch of
for
samples. I mean,
sure.
just imagine hundreds of samples in getting put in different freezers, and it got difficult locating them. Again, I mentioned that we used to hold client samples. Again, hundreds of thousands of samples, and there'd be occasions when these clients would request specific samples. And when they send us samples, we say like we send them back like, hey, yeah, these samples are in these freezers, and in that themselves, they would put it in their own repository system. And so they in their repository system, they would say, okay, these samples are in these freezers and these racks, in these boxes, et cetera, et cetera. So they would come back and say like, hey, we need these samples, and so we would print off physical spreadsheets of those samples and say, okay, we were able to locate and retrieve these samples. We send it back. We would send that spreadsheet back over to the client, and it would be then their responsibility to take it out their repository system. With spreadsheets, I want to first say that there's something wrong with spreadsheets. We actually utilize spreadsheets in CryoArchives as well, but there's a lot of nuances with spreadsheets. There's things like, for one, um, let's say like we are retrieving samples and we forget to say like, yes, we retrieved sample A, and we'll send that back, and they say, okay, they couldn't locate sample A. But then in another project that they'll have down the line, they say they didn't retrieve sample A. Sample A should still be available. We want to retrieve that. They will send that back to us, and we'll say, wait, we'll look into the location and be like, hey, it's not there. So that's one of the issues. Another issue could be that we would send them the list back over to them, and again, it'd be their responsibility to take those samples out of the repository system. But hey, I mean, stuff happens. Maybe they forget to take out the repository system. So again, the issue is they want to retrieve that specific sample. They send it back to us, and it's not there. Why? Because the sample wasn't taken out. And so basically, the solution we wanted to come up with is having a centralized system that not only for us here at Solomon Park to handle, but it could be used for labs, for their sister labs, and to communicate with each other. But we felt that having a centralized system so we could all whoever is participating in those samples can see these where the samples are located, these were the samples that are taken out, but mainly that it is it's updated in real time.
So it seems like with all those, you meshed it together to be able to create CryoArchives. What was the story behind CryoArchives? Like, how were you able to develop it?
So we work with our IT team post solutions. So we just say like, hey, we want to be able to have a system where we can store samples, we can add samples. We have a similar system for SPRL, and we kind of, in a way, um, made a similar product. What we wanted to do, what the main thing is, we wanted to simplify it. We've seen other software where, in our opinion, it was pretty complicated. We just wanted to create a software that was like, what you need, what you see is what you get. So basically, we wanted to have a system where we can add these samples, their locations, but not only store them, but to be able to create these pull lists. So again, when you have sample retrievals, we can generate these pull lists, and from there, once those samples are retrieved from those pull lists, that would update a centralized system where we can not only manage and edit our sample inventory, but create these sample pull lists where again, if a client wanted to retrieve specific amount of or specific number of samples, that they would select those samples to create a quote unquote pull list. Again, whoever is participating, whoever is connected with that client can see the pull list, they retrieve those samples and update our archives in real time. So both sides. So it's not just one person says to this person, and kind of those kind of gets jungled in between, but rather see everything and repeat myself, but in a centralized system.
You use CryoArchives today for Solomon Park?
Yes, so we use CryoArchives as our main sample inventory management system. So we use our own samples. We use it to generate sample pull lists, but it is our main source of a management system.
That's pretty cool that like you developed it yourself and you get to use it and it's usable to like what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, and thinking about it, like it's not only applies to us, but we wanted something that could apply to other labs as well. Other
Mhm.
labs, they store samples, maybe not to a scale as we do with like hundreds of thousands of samples, uh, but we just wanted a system where people can use for their own labs. It applies to those that have maybe 10, 20, 30 samples, but we just wanted a system where you could see all the list of samples that you have, um, and be able to go from there.
Mhm. So I know that Solomon Park is a smaller lab, but how is it scalable to larger labs to be used?
Yep. So like I said, it doesn't matter how many samples that you have. You could be a small lab like us that has store hundreds of samples. You could be a huge lab that stores hundreds of thousands of samples. It applies to any lab, small or large.
Awesome. So I know this is a newer software. Is there any like errors you're seeing that you guys are fixing on or troubleshooting?
Not at the moment. Since it's a software that we use every day, we're able to see and pick up on any
Oh, that's
bugs
awesome.
or anything that will then send to our IT team to fix. Because honestly, if we're having it, then other labs will have it as well. But again, since we're using it almost to a daily basis, well, I will say we are using it on a daily basis that we are able to see those bugs or errors. I did mention that uh, an issue before was I'd say human issue when it came to not updating their repository system. Um, one of the issues that can come across using CryoArchives is I'll say again human error. If we're pulling these samples in real time, we want to make sure that we're still doing our due diligence and taking these samples out of CryoArchives. Um, but as I mentioned before, with a more centralized system, we could see what sample what samples were requested for retrieval, and um, those can be updated in real time. So I guess to answer your question, the main issue that we could still have is still human error and not updating prior archives in real time. Um, but I will say, since we started using this and from the projects that we do have, it's improved immensely, I'd say.
Is there any suggestions on how to minimize the error? Like, what do you guys do to, like, it's just kind of on memory, right? To remember to take in and out of samples, or is there another way you do things?
Yeah, so prior to prior archives, when a client or when we were on retrieve samples, we would get sent a spreadsheet, or we would create a spreadsheet of the samples that are at this location. And from there, we would print out the spreadsheet, go and physically look at the freezer, update the spreadsheet, and then go on the computer and whatnot and take those samples out. What I would recommend from that point is if you have a laptop or a tablet, CryoArch is accessible from those devices as well. So if you have a laptop and you're going into the freezer and you're pulling these samples, you could also update CryoArchives as well. So that'd be my suggestion. I
Real
think it
time.
right real time exactly.
Mhm.
Um, it CryoArchives has really just taken that like the quote unquote middleman out and the spreadsheets, update, and then sending it. Um, do want to emphasize real time as why or the benefit of having CryoArchives or why we came up with CryoArchives.
Nice. Um, is there any new features or integrations you guys are working on with CryoArchives?
Um, at the moment, no. We wanted to create a simplify or a simple, easy to use, plug and play type of software, so that any lab can use it. Any lab can just be like, hey, um, we want to subscribe to it, and then let's like play our samples in. And obviously, if you have suggestions, we'll take those suggestions into consideration to be able to update if needed. But again, it's just we want to create a simple, easy to use software, so any lab from small to large can use them. If anyone's interested in seeing CryoArchives, kind of just getting a snippet and to see what it may look like, and if interested, subscribe or maybe request to ask questions, they could go on the website. It is cryo.solomon.org/home. So they're able to see sort of like an introduction or I guess the best way to describe it, kind of scroll through, see what it looks like, and yeah, you could see it from there.
For people who are listening, do they get a special discount if they sign up?
Yeah, so we do offer a 30% discount on subscription. They'll be able to see that on the website. Um, if they have any questions, we do have there's a link there to book a consultation. So if they have any questions about subscriptions, discounts, they can go ahead and click on that and ask away, and someone will be able
Okay,
to help them. Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, George, for your time. It was great learning more about CryoArchives and what you're doing.
Cool. Thank you, Nancy.